Well, good afternoon, everyone. Got three people in the audience. That's great. Three's better than none. I'd like to call the special committee of the whole meeting for Monday, June 22nd to order. Before I start, I would like to respectfully acknowledge that we are gathered here on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, represented today by the Kasepsan and Songhees nations, whose stewardship of these lands continues to this day. Item 2 is approval of agenda. May I have a mover and seconder to adopt? Thank you very much. I just need one for committee of the whole. Thanks. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. I shall move on to adoption of minutes. May I have a mover to adopt the minutes from June 8th, 2026, committee of the whole meeting minutes. Thank you. Councillor Day, are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. We'll move on to public participation. We received one written submission prior to agenda publication, and it is attached to the agenda. And there were no submissions received after agenda publication. And no members of the public have registered to speak virtually. At this point in time, members of the public will now be given the opportunity to present concerns or ask questions. You'll be given 2 minutes, at which time you'll see a green, amber, and red light. Alternately, well, I guess there's only one item on the agenda, so we don't have to worry about that. And business cards are available at the podium if you want a written response to any of your questions. May I have a show of hands of those that want to speak? 1, 2, 2. Okay, thank you very much. Please come on up, Trevor.
Russ here to speak. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council. I got through half of the speaking notes at the last meeting, so if you don't mind, I'll jump to the second. We talked last time about the notion of removing written submissions. That's a concern. We talked about the reverting public participation to a single block. That's a concern. We talked about notices of motion, and that continues to be a concern. The way we handle it in Colwood in terms of notice of motion versus motions from the floor doesn't really fit with Robert's Rules of Order as we understand them. I would ask Council to consider, taken together and alongside previously raised concerns about the city's website, do these changes reflect a consistent pattern of reducing public access and engagement? We ask that you reject this very undemocratic proposed bylaw change. Instead, we would strongly urge you, Mayor and Council, to adopt the recommendations included in our submission to support and encourage greater public awareness and public participation in City of Colwood decision-making processes. We also ask that today you affirm publicly and on the record that transparency and public access are not administrative burdens to be managed down, but democratic obligations to be upheld. Democratic accountability is not an administrative burden. It is an obligation of this council that this council was elected to uphold. Thank you.
I'll give you, because there's only 2 speakers, I'll give you an additional minute if you want to.
I got through the last half, Mr. Mayor, but I appreciate the offer. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
I'm on now. Okay, thank you. John English, Royal Bay Homeowners Association. Here to support what Trevor Rapperly has presented and submitted. He has the entire association behind him. This is a very, very important issue. We've tried very hard to help improve the integrity and accountability and professionalism, frankly, of the city of Colwood's decision-making process. We've been doing that for 6 years because it was absolutely atrocious. And so for us, this is going to be an election issue, just to make everybody aware. And we are going to really want to know where each one of you stand if you plan to run again for re-election, because we want to work with you to improve the way the city of Colwood works and not to see it retrogress. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John. Anybody else? Last call for public participation. Seeing none, Joe doesn't want to speak. No. Okay, we shall move on to item 5, which is unfinished business. We were stepping through the council procedure bylaw. If I can get you to introduce it, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the chair to the rest of council, this is a continuation of the report that was provided at the last committee of the whole meeting. And with that, Marcy Lalande will take us through those other decision points for council's consideration.
Thanks, Marcy.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is a continuation of our last committee of the whole meeting where council looked at 7 decision points. There was 4 decisions that were made, so we have the remainder to look at this evening. I actually just wanted to bring up just a little overview of the ones that you did make a decision on at the last meeting. Bear with me. Okay, so the first one was about simplifying and modernizing the procedure bylaw. Sorry, that wasn't supposed to show. There we go. So there's the motion right here. So it was that council direct staff to review the city's procedure bylaw and bring forward proposed amendments to simplify and modernize its framework with the goal of improving clarity, accessibility, and alignment with current legislative requirements and best practices. And that staff provide a redline version of the draft procedure bylaw a minimum of 2 weeks prior to council considering the bylaw. Decision 2 is about agenda distribution, and council moved that, or committee moved, I'm sorry, that the complete council and committee of the whole agenda packages be distributed by the end of the day, Wednesday, prior to the meeting date, and that complete select standing committee agenda packages be distributed end of day Wednesday prior to the meeting date. Then we looked at consent agenda. And council made the motion that recommendations that are passed unanimously from committee of the whole, standing or select committees be scheduled under consent agenda for council. And then on to rules of debate and motions for speaking limits. So the motion was that each member may speak twice for a maximum of 5 minutes to a motion, and that questions and comments are allowed prior to a motion to a maximum of 5 minutes per member. And further that the member who initially introduced the substantive main motion is permitted a final reply to the debate to respond to objections before the final vote is called, even if they've already exhausted their initial speaking time. And that's where we got to. We ended at decision point 5A. So there's 3 points to this part, which is all related to public participation. Each one has been split out. So the first one is about the public participation format. So where do you want to have it? So currently what we've been doing, there was a motion that was made throughout this term that council public participation be allowed at the beginning of each item on the agenda. The current procedure bylaw allots for 20 minutes at the beginning of the meeting. So we're looking for council to determine placement and structure of the public participation. So transitions between public input and debate should be something that's considered. And just for some overview, I know that quite a few councils do public participation at the beginning. Some can do public participation at the beginning and some do a period at the very end. But I'm not aware of any other one in BC that allows it at the beginning of each item. And so the staff recommendation before you is that 20 minutes be allotted for the public participation at the beginning of the meeting, which may be extended by the chair or by a majority vote of members present. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will go to questions at this point in time. Council Ward.
Thank you. Yeah, my concern with this is it's unilaterally being proposed despite the fact that the motion that came up during this term, as the corporate officer indicated, was unanimously supported by this very council to structure it the way it is. So whose idea was it to change it? Why is it even being proposed as a change when it was unilaterally voted on by this group? You know, I would argue that yes, it is different that we have allowed residents to speak prior to a specific agenda item. And maybe it isn't commonplace throughout the province, but then again, neither is a municipally funded medical clinic. So as someone who spent my career in private sector work, innovation is something to be lauded and explored, not tamped down. So I personally don't have an issue with it as it stands now. I think if there's any challenges with it, the onus would just fall upon us in the meeting structure to manage it effectively, to be very clear at the outset that you have two options. You can only speak once. These are the times that you can do that. But you know, again, if council chooses to go a different direction, that's fine. Also with this particular decision point, I'm getting ahead of it because I know we're speaking later to the amount of time that's going to be proposed. I believe that we should extend it to 3 minutes per individual. I'll touch on that when we get there, but because of that thought, I'm going to look to change this to 30 minutes in terms of public participation. And then this is more of a statement than a question, but I would say one of the hallmarks of this term, and Mr. Mayor, this speaks to you directly, is as the chair, you've given a lot of latitude to people to voice their concerns. We know how challenging it is for people to come out and stand up at a podium and for the first time. And, you know, oftentimes it's a single issue thing. It's the first time they've ever been here. And if we're so draconian about it that we hold them to 2 minutes as a finite thing. Other councils, for example, have rules whereby you have to speak, you can only speak to things on the agenda. And maybe one day we have to go there. But I think one of the nice kind of small town holdovers we have in Colwood has been your approach, Mr. Mayor, to let people speak without feeling like they're, you know, got a hammer hanging over their heads. We give everybody that democratic kind of moment. So I'd like to see like 2 minutes. We see every single time people hit the end and that's it. I think if we allow 30 minutes and then eventually I'll argue for 3 minutes as part of that, we really are, what we're doing then is just cementing in a approach, Mr. Mayor, that I think has resonated with people and they appreciate you for it. So that's my take on it here.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dean.
Thank you. My question is along the same lines, was what problem we're trying to fix. And, you know, occasionally we have long agendas and a lot to say, and I understand that has a price, if you will. But in my history of trying to get our format right, the addition of allowing people to speak at the agenda item as it comes up, it allows for a little more sense that you're actually speaking to the issue and not getting lost in the length of the agenda as someone from the public. And it's something that I have heard a lot of feedback from people on, saying that they really appreciate that opportunity for Colwood. So is there something that I am unaware of that you're trying to address? Is there some other problem that we're not aware of?
Staff.
Thank you for the question. I found that sometimes there are times that we forget that process and go on to the next item, and maybe there's somebody that wants to speak. It kind of sometimes interrupts the flow of council making decision making. So it was just a suggestion out there. Public participation is something that council makes a decision on. It's not something that's legislatively required. So there are even some municipalities that don't allow it at all. So I find that this council is definitely wanting to hear from the public. So it's just how you want to manage it. it's just for discussion and thought because we're looking at revamping the entire bylaw. You've entered into some different processes. Now you've had some time to feel what they're like and to see if that's something that you want to concrete into this procedure change.
Thank you. So I guess I'll be advocating for us to retain the choice because sometimes people, they come, they want to have their say and get on with other things that they're doing and watch the meeting later. And sometimes there's so many people here that speaking at the item is a better option. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Grove?
Thank you, Mayor. I think the 3-minute idea, I know this is supplementary, but the 30 minutes that Councillor Ward is speaking to, I tend to agree there, even if it's 3 minutes plus possible 2, at the discretion of, but more importantly, the idea of the speaking to the item at the time in the agenda. I find it muddies the meeting a little bit, and that could be from my old adult brain, but I find the meeting and the focus of the meeting is on with this table and the staff and their contribution. And for me, when public participation happens at the beginning of the meeting, I take notes. Many, many times they are reiterating something that we've received in an email beforehand. So I'm a cogent. I have the notes are with the item that's they're speaking to. And when we get to that item, I can quickly peruse my notes. And it's very effective focusing what has been said. So I feel that the meeting, it's more efficient and somehow cleaner. And I would support this recommendation. However, if we do retain the speaking at the moment of the agenda item that we've done, and I did vote in favor of it, so that was like 3 years ago when I was still tying my shoes. So my opinion has changed on that, and I found it uncomfortable on many occasions, not to mention the disruption when someone's forgotten and it's like we stop all of a sudden and go, oh yeah, sir, sorry, John, you want to come speak, or whatever the circumstance might be. So I'm fine with keeping it. Don't get me wrong, it works. I understand the intent behind it, but I would prefer public participation at the beginning.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Olson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief. I don't disagree with some of the points that Councillor Grove has made, and I appreciate the staff coming forward with a recommendation to help make our life easier and maybe a bit smoother. But I certainly think that there is a much more of an impact when the public have the opportunity to speak to something right before, we have a chance to hear them on it. So I would certainly be in favor of maintaining status quo, what we're doing now. By allowing residents to come up and speak during the open participation or before the agenda item. I would like to see that extension from 2 minutes to 3 minutes. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'll just wrap it up with my own comments. This is probably arguably the most important policy decision in this entire report, actually. Public participation. It really is to me. And you can see me, I'm always feverishly making notes when people do talk. And so I do think it's critical. And I'm in agreement with extending this to 30 minutes and at 3 minutes a shot. It's just that some people, like I said, especially when we have complex items on the agenda. And so I think that doesn't obviate the need to, if someone has to go, is saying something that is really good and we can unanimously agree to let them extend. We can do that. I hope you guys will agree to let me, or the chair, have that latitude actually, because it's, I think we've been pretty darn fair with the public on this, but I do like the idea of just increasing the allotment to public participation to 30 minutes at 3 minutes a pop. So it gives us 10 citizens. So like it personally. At that point in time, I was wondering if someone wants to make a motion next, please. Councillor Ward, please.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, considering that this and point 5B are really intertwined, they're almost inseparable. I would just make a motion that we extend public participation to 30 minutes. And that public participation time, the participants will be granted an opportunity to speak for up to 3 minutes, and that speaking times may be extended for an additional 2 minutes by the chair. So I think that's reasonable. I'm not recommending any change to the particular placement of public participation, so I'm not including the section that says at the beginning of the meeting. I would still, to be clear, my motion would include that still as being optional for the public participant to determine whether they want to speak at the beginning or later.
Thank you very much. And discussion. I'll let you change it, and then we can discuss it.
Sorry, can
I think that was you gotta push it. Thank you. Councilor Ward, yeah.
I think,
that's
Mr. Mayor, we're going to say the same thing, is that the additional 2 minutes could be extended by the chair. Personally, I would put it that way. I know historically we've said unanimous consent. We've kind of forged ahead. In many cases, as you said, you've just kind of arbitrarily done it, and I haven't objected, because again, I think it speaks to the culture that we want to create, where people are welcome to bring their opinions. And credit to you, I think you've done a great job there. So I have no personal issue with leaving the additional 2 minutes to the chair. And I think 3 minutes would people ample time to be able to finish a coherent thought without being interrupted so often, and you having to do that. In many ways, our current system forces you into that decision. And I do recognize the comments around the piece of letting people speak prior to an agenda item. And I recognize that's contentious for some. And from a chair standpoint, it can be a bit of an irritant. From a staff standpoint, I think it's a bit of an irritant, but democracy can be messy sometimes. And I do find, in a particularly heated situation, if there's an item that is really drawn the crowd, which we know is the case, oftentimes we might have 3 people in the audience, but when there's a particularly contentious item, the room fills up. They're here for that one item. We know that. And I think giving them a chance to speak to it, I think Councillor Day touched on that, it seems more relevant. Having been on the other side of the table, I feel like if that's 2 hours into the meeting, it feels more relevant if I can speak to it in the moment before the decision. So that's just my opinion on it. That's why I've included in this motion, but that's why I wanted to do that.
Thank you very much, Councilor Grove.
I just would agree. I will support the motion, because I do think it looks good to me. The idea of the chair making the discretion of the time also keeps the focus of the meeting control on the chair's seat, which I think is a strong statement in itself. So I agree with that part also. So
Thank you. Seeing no other discussion, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor, please. Oh, it's unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll move on. 5B is basically looked after now, I think.
On to 5C.
Yes, please.
So this is public participation for written submissions. So we're looking for council to determine whether written submissions should be appended to meeting agendas. So some of the considerations to think of is it is not a legislative requirement to do so. It's not common practice, and it can create administrative privacy and risk management considerations. So I can give you a prime example. Is our last council meeting, we had over 23 submissions on the day of the council agenda. One of our concerns is we're also forwarding 23 written submissions to council to try and get them to digest that information prior to the council meeting, which is quite a bit on council. Some of it is also due to the length of the submission. So if council does decide that they would like to take written submissions, they might want to consider condensing them down to 1 page. So one thing under public participation right now is that each participant is allowed 1 opportunity. the way that it has been happening is sometimes we get people that submit it by written submission also come to speak to it. So it's really two opportunities. The reason that we actually put written submissions on the public agenda was due to COVID, and we were looking at other ways for people to put submissions into council if they weren't comfortable being in the chambers. Also, some people might have be uncomfortable with coming up to the podium to bring an item forward to council. So it was giving people another option to get their thoughts into council. So the recommendation is that written submissions from the public be accepted and circulated to council, but not necessarily appended to the council agenda. And I will leave that for you to discuss.
I'm going to take questions before comments. Councillor Day, and then I'll go for comments.
Thanks. So just in terms of thinking about what the solution is that we're trying to achieve, I don't know what the policies might be that would limit us from doing so, but it seems to me that there should be programs available that would remove the personal information of your identity or your email address or other things. And we have been able to achieve that for quite some time now in receiving the submissions. So I'm just wondering, is it a problem of not enough tools in the toolbox, or is it simply that the volume is increasing for public letters?
Absolutely, the volume is definitely increasing, and with quite a few of them, we get them sometimes. A majority of them come at just before noon. So then we have to read them all, review them, make sure that there's no other personal information. Because there are some that will maybe send something in about an issue that they're having, and they'll mention their neighbors or personal information of other people. So we have to be really cognizant of that and make sure that we remove that before we send it out. The length of some of the submissions that are coming in due to AI is pretty substantial too. So we're definitely noticing a size increase where before we, received maybe a one-page document from somebody, which is pretty reasonable because a one-page document is similar to what somebody would do if they got up to the podium and spoke for the allotted time. So some of those long submissions are time consuming. And again, council doesn't have usually enough time to review this before the council meeting as well.
That sounds more like a deadline issue than necessarily a length issue. But I would just say that I think that, and it's just a comment really, but um, the number and quality of submissions has been going up. And I have found that receiving something substantive has often had more benefits for my understanding of what the resident is trying to put forward than some of the previous input where it was shorter or more succinct perhaps. They like it or they don't like it, rather than a lot of what I've been taking value from has been providing information that I may not have known. I'm thinking particularly of some of the transportation related issues where road widths became more critical, and I might have considered that some of that was just a resistance to change, but later was informed through that process, about some different uses that I'm maybe not as aware of on the roads and the requirements for them. So I think there's a lot of benefits.
Thank you very much. Councillor Grove?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just maybe a bit confused here. So the appended to the agenda aspect of this means what, as opposed to simply being accepted and circulated to council?
So what we do for written submissions, ones that we receive prior to the publication of the agenda are published with the agenda. Once the agenda is published, if we receive written submissions, right on the agenda, we ask that people submit their written submissions directly to corporate services. Then what we do is we wait until noon of the day of the meeting because that is the cutoff. We compile them all into one document. we redact them, forward them to council, and then we attach them to the agenda the following day. That's the current process.
Right, so if I get a document that's been forwarded to me, it's already been dealt with or processed by you or by the office. When a submission comes in, it's not ready to attach to the agenda yet. But-
No, what we do is we forward it to council, so they have it prior to the council meeting. And there could be, it's hard to say, depending on what the correspondence, some of it actually has questions in there.
Yeah.
Responses that are required, so we are trying to make sure that we review that, forward it to the appropriate staff for response as well.
Yeah.
And then we copy council on that as well.
Yeah, so I see a lot of this material comes in, and because my schedule, perhaps I haven't seen it until I sit down for the meeting. I open up my agenda and I see a lot of material that I haven't had any chance to peruse, and that can be a real challenge. And my only comment with that is that if I have a report on the agenda, let's say, or an item on the agenda, and I have reports from staff, they're formed, they're developed, they're established, they're published, and put forward, and I have an option for the previous days and the week before through the weekend and the Monday of the meeting time to contact the staff, to come in, to phone call, to somehow connect with them and find an answer. I can come in through Jason's office and he can direct me to someone. I can find shall I say, an educated, well-informed answer that's very focused. When I receive the submissions from the public, as much as I appreciate it, and the items can be discussed, I'm inclined more to want to discuss that with staff in the context of the item that it's speaking to, because I feel like that's my context of my job. So if I want to speak to the public about the issue, I can do that too, or the resident that submitted that material, but it's a different process, or it lives in a different place. So I was just curious how, if it's not appended to the agenda, which happens the next day, you're saying, right? So that sort of lives in archives. Is that the idea? To tie it together so it's with the agenda as opposed to where would it sit otherwise?
We actually have currently 2 locations, so there was a motion made earlier in the term that anything that's a written submission that goes to committee or council, we've got a section on our website that they're all compiled in one location. As well, they're also attached to each agenda that the submission was for. So for example, last council meeting, we had 23 submissions. They were circulated to council. The following day, on the Tuesday, we appended them to the agenda and republished it. And also put them on the site where we were putting all written submissions. So they're in 2 locations on our website available for the public.
Right, I see. Okay, thanks, that helps. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Jordison?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess my question is, and you may have just answered it, but how are we being transparent to the public if it's not appended to the agenda? Like, it's one thing to say that we've all received it, but what about the public? How does the rest of the public see what was submitted if it's not appended to the agenda?
It is in another location on our website. It's not appended to the agenda, but it is in another location. So we actually do it twice following the meeting.
Isn't it? Yeah, I guess I just think it would be simpler. Navigating the website is already difficult, but I think it would just be simpler if it was attached with the agenda. It just shows that it was received and it's all together in the right place. But yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Olson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not really any questions, more of a comment. I think personally, like, and in speaking with other residents, I'd like to see that we continue publishing the written submissions as part of the public record. But I do think that we should be setting reasonable limits, as you had suggested, around the length of the submissions and perhaps the number. I know that AI has created an incredible amount of work for everyone. I mean, we're seeing extremely lengthy submissions that are coming in, and they're written like novels. And so I think there should be a reasonable limit around the length of those submissions. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, not a question, but more of a comment as well. As I a little concerned that maybe we're putting the cart before the horse on this one. You heard reference to the website from a couple other councilors, and I know that's obviously on the agenda later this evening, Councillor Day's motion on that. And I think that speaks to the issue here is that people want to know that what they've provided has people have paid attention to it, that it's been read, that and so to simply take it and circulate it to council, unless council then chooses to respond to those individuals, which if we follow current protocol, there wouldn't be contact information there. So how do they really know? And I think democracy has to be done in the light, right? It has to be seen, even if it makes a little bit more work. So I would be okay with not necessarily attaching it to an agenda because it isn't part of the agenda. It's in reaction to the agenda. But I would want to have a dedicated place. So if I'm a resident and I go to the city's website and I see the meeting schedule and I know that, you know, there's a meeting this evening and I'm interested in Colwood Creek Park, I can see the agenda there, and adjacent to it would be a very obvious button that says submissions received, you know, from the public regarding tonight's agenda. I could click on that and see, okay, who sent in what. And I think from an administrative burden standpoint, I do agree, obviously, with the you know, influx of AI, people are now sending in, you know, 14-page missives with charts and all sorts of things. And I think it's not unreasonable at some point to put some kind of restraint on that, to say, okay, submissions longer than 2 pages won't be appended to the website, or 3 pages or what have you. I mean, I think you have to be reasonable. It's also not reasonable for council to have to go through the agenda in its entirety from Wednesday to Monday and then receive, you know, 30 packages that all perhaps even exceed the materials that were done for council. So I think there's a balance there. I don't know exactly what that looks like, but again, that's where I say the cart before the horse, because without a website that people are confident in going to and finding the information, we can't make this change in a way that's going to work.
Thank you very much. I'll go for the first time, Councillor Day, and I'll let you speak for the second. So my question is, how many staff hours are currently being spent processing and you know, publishing the written submissions right now, Marcy? Approximately. Just give me your best guess.
It's really hard to say. It depends on the meeting. I can tell you that last time probably was probably a few hours, at least for the last council meeting.
Yeah, frankly, those ones that come in at lunch hour on the Mondays, I frankly, I don't have the time. I'm supposed to be preparing for all this stuff, right? And I tend to ignore them, and I don't want to ignore them, but I have to catch up to them. So having them appended to the agenda is a good thing, or someplace like that. We can't lose that transparency. My second question is as follows. What is required? What has to be redacted? Do you have to go back to each of the submitters and say, can I leave your name on there, or do we just automatically redact names all the time?
Thank you. We do automatically redact personal phone mail or emails, phone numbers, cell numbers. Sometimes people will talk about children, their next door neighbors. I'll redact that. So I always look at anything that can identify somebody by providing their personal information.
Okay.
So we really do have to thoroughly read each piece of correspondence, or also things that might have offensive language, you know, comments that are
Okay.
offensive to
Reasonable.
council, things that are within our procedure bylaw that we won't accept. Those are other things that we sometimes do redact as well.
So last question I have for you then, seeing that there's some of these submissions I know right now, because when they're electronic, you can see when they're AI generated. It's really clear. I know. Now I know. And that's why some of those submissions are so long. And just the formatting, you know, that they're AI generated. But can't we use our own AI to redact to speed up the process?
Thank you. I have not done that as of yet. I'm sure we're going to get there, but I personally prefer a human eye to make sure that we don't let something slip by. I think that's important. And just as another notation too, one thing that we do is in those minutes, we always provide an overview that there was 23 written submissions, 10 were related to this, 4 were related to this. So we do provide that overview in the minutes as well, that if somebody wanted to go look at that information, they could.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dave for second that.
Thank you. I have a motion to propose
Okay.
that written submissions from Colwood residents should be circulated when received and published under public input in a searchable format on the website and linked to the council or committee meeting they are sent in for with personal information redacted. And if I may motivate,
Sure.
just we do have an issue with our website and finding things on it. And we also have an issue in terms of something I talk about often, which is because I've been here for so long, there's a lot of background to how we've arrived at the decisions that we have that currently, other than me telling you about it, you can't find anywhere. You can't find the reports that I wrote years ago on the website. You can't look up the public input that came for previous council meetings. So I really value how we get here because it helps to inform what we keep and what we let go of. Sure, things are going to change over time and there's going to be new challenges, but I'm just suggesting that we keep what we have and address problems as and when we can clearly identify them. Some of this, I think, is maybe a deadline related problem with when we have the deadline for the written submissions. And as far as the length is concerned, I'm a little unsure on the AI generation thing because I've seen some letters that are written that are lengthy and well informed, but they're just trying to put all their facts together in one spot. And it's not AI generated, it's somebody clipping and pasting from their online resources. So there may be some discretion in terms of, and I could be wrong because there's certainly AI out there and doing all kinds of things that I may not be recognizing, but I think we should stick to what we know and bring forward changes as they're warranted and defensible.
Thanks very much. Can you put the motion, Councillor Dave's motion? Okay. Sorry, Councillor Dave. Sure shall.
So written submissions be circulated when received to count and append and published under public input in a searchable format on the website and linked to the council or committee meeting they are sent in for with personal information redacted.
Before I open it up for questions, is that feasible, IT or staff? Is this all feasible? Can we do this?
Right now, council is providing us information. There's more information that will come with bylaw changes with some of these questions answered,
Yeah.
what the resourcing is and what those requirements are. So this council isn't making a decision on the bylaw here today. This is giving staff the guidance to bring this back with options and resources from what I've heard from council.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Jordison.
Thank you, Mayor.
On the motion.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think the motion's fine. I think that there's a public education part of this as well. I think if council's requesting a specific, like just, I guess, more than this, but like if we were expecting certain things, we have to tell the public what to do and what not to do, and explain it to them better, so that we can get informed information when they send it in, like submissions. They're not putting their phone number, they're not talking about their neighbors and stuff like that. I just wanted to make that, just to make to say that I just think that it's not explained properly on the website, maybe on how to send in written submissions. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Counselor, do you have a suggested change on that? Counselor Jordison, how we can make that better then? You gonna think about that? Okay, fair enough. Yep, Counselor Grove?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just asking about the cutoff time is noon right now, Marcy. So that just stays with this recommendation that would come back for the draft bylaw stating that.
I think council's hit the nail somewhat on the head here in terms of, are the deadlines, do they make sense? We had a submission that came in today at 2:00 and it was 40 pages that the member of the public wanted to have for council tonight. Well, you missed the deadline, so we weren't able to get that out. So we'll provide that to council. But what we'll do is we'll carefully look at the timelines and see, make some proposed amendments for council so that you can get that in a timely manner, because it does lead to tough decision making when you get something at 2:00 on a Monday when council members have other jobs and other commitments, and it's hard to get that information beforehand. So we'll look at the timing. We'll bring some proposals for council to consider with the bylaw.
Thank you. And I would add that it's difficult when receiving something in the afternoon prior to an evening council meeting, that much of the research and much of the work has been done toward that decision or toward that particular item, perhaps days before, and it's cumulative. And typically on a Monday, I'll refresh the work I've done prior. So the submissions often come in late. And if, like this one today, comes in, it isn't going to be appended until tomorrow, then it misses the mark. And its effectiveness, I think, would diminishes if it's about something that's ongoing. Of course, it's perfectly useful. But I'm finding it difficult on the Mondays to try to keep track of the submissions when they're it's not just the length, it's a complexity of some of the notions coming in, and they can be very good points, but it requires more than just a quick rumination on someone's letter, because you have to, just like the staff reports, I want to follow up and verify it, and I want to be able to understand the integrity of the thing. And sometimes you can't discern that for sure, or perhaps it speaks opposite to the work that is being presented to us by staff. So um, the deadline is fine. I understand it from an administrative point of view, but the other element, I could be happy with a deadline of Friday before a Monday meeting or some such thing, because when am I supposed to absorb this information? That's my only concern. I have no problem with the motion as it sits.
Thanks very much, Councilor Ward, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, I think for me, I think it comes down to timing as well. I'm a little confused because the way it's worded right now, you know, it's when you receive it, it's circulated to council, which I understand. So that's going to come in on a, you know, as it arrives basis, anywhere from Wednesday evening right through to Monday at noon. I would be very clear that the cutoff is the cutoff. I think any letters that come in past the cutoff date, and again, we have to communicate to the public, but there is no expectation that they are either appended to the agenda prior to the meeting or that council will read them. I think there is a reasonable expectation that a cutoff is a cutoff, otherwise why have it, right? So that's one piece, and I think, but generally I like the idea. I'm not clear as to when things here are published on the website in a searchable format. Is that prior to the meeting? Is that subsequent to the meeting? It doesn't specify that here, but I think as long as they ultimately are appended to the website and are searchable and somebody who is interested in that topic can go find it, that's the key thing for me. The other one is I don't have an objection to limiting it to one submission per individual, simply because, again, and I believe the corporate officer stated it, when you come forward to a council meeting, you have one opportunity to speak to council, be it at the outset of the meeting or prior to an agenda item. So it's a very fair rule to apply here as well. And there is nothing in that sentence saying you can't speak to multiple items within one submission. So if you're reviewing the weekly agenda, say on a Thursday, and there's 2 items of interest to you as a member of the public, you can put those 2 items in one submission. We aren't stating that it can only be about one thing. So I think one email from one individual to the city would be more manageable by staff to read through versus an individual going line by line in an agenda going, well, I got to send in a letter on this. And oh, I just saw another agenda item, I'm going to send another email. I mean, those are frustrating for me as well when I see multiple emails from the same individual on different subjects and subjects that aren't related to the agenda. And it's a slippery slope because I think the next step there will be moving towards what other councils do, which is you can only speak to or send in submissions related to the agenda. And I don't want to see that. I think we're a small enough city that we can still encourage people to come forward and speak about whatever has sort of struck their fancy. But there has to be kind of a balance there. So I would look to amend this to add in just that component. I would propose an amendment just to state that, well, the staff recommendation that written submissions from the public be limited to one submission per individual. I'm going to strike out the submission not exceeding 1 page bit. I think there's an argument to be made, 1 page can encapsulate a lot of information, but sometimes you need 5 to provide maps and other pieces like that. So as for timing, I think, the CAO indicated we can come back and look at that. It's not listed here as to exactly when it happened, but I think we will need to clarify that even just from a public expectation as to what will happen if they send in a 40-page letter at 11:45 on a Monday. Will it or will it not be seen by council that evening or appended to the agenda? In fairness, I would say that's an unreasonable ask. So we have to leave, we have to determine what that looks like. But if it's an email that comes in at 10 in the morning on Monday and it's 1 page, realistically, you would expect to see that attached to the agenda. But I don't know how we resolve that within the motion that's here.
Because it is a different matter.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Yes, it is actually.
Yeah,
Let's separate.
I'll withdraw that just so it's not an issue. You can take it up later.
Definitely. So I'm comfortable with the recommendation as is, and so if I read it right, CEO Johnson, you're going to come back with some proposed different deadlines because this is a deadline issue. It really is. It drives me. It's the worst thing for me right now, and I don't feel it's fair to the public right now when I'm coming into a meeting and I haven't read some of the submissions that came in at 12 noon. And because some of them are big and you just like, how do you do this right now? It's almost impossible.
Yeah, we will certainly look at the timelines to make sure that the public has the opportunity to respond to the agenda, but have it in such time that council can carefully consider that with the agenda item. So we'll look at the timing. We'll bring some proposals for council's consideration when the bylaw comes forward from a timing perspective.
Excellent. Thank you. Oops, go ahead, Councilor Day. Sorry.
Sorry, just the discussion kind of expanded away from the motion a little bit there. So I just wanted to point out that the public has a very difficult time knowing what's going to be on our agenda, given that, the time between when the agenda is published on a Wednesday evening, let's say, and people have like Thursday, Friday, maybe the weekend to look at it. They don't always know in advance when certain discussion points are coming forward. We had tried to sort of deal with that previously with the long-term and short-term agendas so that it kind of forecast when council was going to be looking at something. So currently can be very challenging, which is, I think, why we're getting the late number of late submissions and large submissions late. So I'm just advocating that if we're going to put an earlier deadline and more limits on how much information people include, then I think we really need to provide more information earlier to the public for when is a good time. And I think there's lots of room for doing things that could address those issues, workshops, public engagement sessions, doing more outreach with our community to get more of a dialogue. Right now, the only thing you really have is public participation. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other discussion, I will call the question on the motion, which is in front of you. All those in favor, please. Any, okay, it's unanimous. We'll move on. Thank you very much. That was good discussion.
Okay, so now we're on to notice of motion. So
What, sorry, yeah. You wanted that do something. Counselor Ward, sorry about that.
Well, technically, if you go back one,
Yeah, please.
the bottom paragraph of this one was what was just referenced last time. The piece about limiting to one submission per individual. That is my preference as well, to make that the policy. I was really interested in what you said, Councillor Day, because I spent some time today thinking about that. The absence of the long-term agenda. You use a different context. You were talking about it dictating some of the last minute stuff coming forward, but I see that as one of the challenges for the public to know what's going to be talked about. I find it an additional challenge from council view as someone who's not here in city council on a day-to-day basis because of my day job, that I have constituents asking me, well, when is that going to come up for council? When will that be discussed? And I no longer have any view into that. And I think that's a real concern. I'm going to finish on that because I think that's an issue, and I'm going to put a motion forward tonight to restore it. I need to have more visibility into what the city business looks like, because I've found for quite a period now, I can't answer people's questions without having to go through the whole rigmarole of reaching out to the CAO or the mayor, just asking somebody who might be in the know, like a developer. It's become quite a frustration for me. And I also think that speaks to the archaic notice of motion policy, which we'll be talking about coming up shortly as well, is that I think that whole procedure was kind of linked to the former long-term agenda piece, and now that linkage is gone. But I would like to just make a motion here that we add to the bylaw on this public participation component, that written submissions be limited to one submission per individual per agenda. So that, if there's a committee meeting, you can send in a letter on that. If there's a council meeting the same week, you send in a letter on that. It isn't to say one per week. It's just specifically per agenda.
Perfect. Thank you very much. You want to type up that motion, please? That's great. And I'll go to Councillor Day. Discussion on the motion on the floor.
Thank you. I will be supporting this simply because I think there is a risk of, again, limiting input, and there aren't that many members of our community who are sending in lots of letters. Sometimes they're sending in long letters. That was objected to. So I know at least in one or two cases that they've started sending separate letters for separate topics to try to make it easier for that input to be received, that it's for specific topics. But either way, I really think that our job is to hear from as many people or on as many items as possible. And I really feel that this is answering a problem that doesn't happen a lot. And I think that it is pushing back against public input when really public input is important, even if I don't agree with the speakers. It's really important that they have an opportunity to lay out what their concerns are and lay it out in a way that I can understand what the impact is and why their knowledge is different than mine. Because I learn a lot. I didn't show up here with all the answers, even if I thought I had them. And and I still don't have all the answers, and I'm learning a lot every time I'm here. Thanks.
Thanks. Just, and Council Ward can correct me, but I don't think, the one submission is you can talk about as many things as you want. It's just from a redacting point of view, it's a lot easier if you just have the one, right? And you just redact the names and all that. So I think you can have multiple issues. I think that's what I heard you say. So I have no issue with the way it's worded right now. So it's just making it a lot easier for administratively. And I'm okay with that because, I can read something, I can organize my thought with different issues on one submission. That's all. I think that's Council Board, but you can correct me.
No, if I may further motivate, Mr. Mayor, that's accurate. I think I would respectfully, Councillor Day, reject the assertion that it's limiting transparency. I'm all for transparency. I mean, I engage with people in social media setting, probably to my own detriment, to be as transparent as I can. It doesn't limit people from talking on as many subjects as they like. You could speak to every single agenda item in one submission. My goal here is to strike a balance, because I get the sense on this particular topic coming from corporate officer and staff is that redaction is a lot of work. And I think if one individual, person X, wants to write in and speak to an agenda item, if it's done in one submission, then that's one redaction of an email address, one redaction of a name, and so forth. The volume of work doesn't change, in a lot of ways, because if that person sends in 6 different emails, you still got to read everything, but it just keeps it a little more clear and concise. And then I think in terms of circulation to council, if there's 10 submissions, it's a little easier if they're from 10 different people, 10 different perspectives. We get that. I don't really like seeing 10 emails and 7 of them are from one individual on all different topics. I think it actually, the messenger loses their message, because credibility becomes questionable when it seems like you're being slammed with something. To me, the transparency isn't lost here at all. If you want to write to every specific agenda item, new paragraph, new paragraph, new paragraph, I think it's important that we haven't capped the size here. If we had capped it at 2 pages or something, then I think you could make that argument, but there is no cap on the length of the document, so go at it. I mean, speak to every single agenda item if you will, but that's my take on it. I don't think there's a loss of transparency here. I just think it keeps it a little cleaner, more concise from an administrative standpoint and from a council viewing standpoint. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Clarification. Being no other discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And it's unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll move on. Favorite subject.
Sorry, one second. Thank you. So on to notice of motion. So notice of motion, currently a council member must provide notice of motion in writing to the corporate officer 7 days in advance of the meeting date. In the case of urgent business, a council member may obtain council's approval to introduce the motion as a late item. So this is on here for additional wording that might want to be added to notice of motion, outlining that the item will be considered at the next regular meeting of council. So typically what the notice of motion is for is it's to give the public some time to digest whatever that motion is. It's on an agenda and then it will be discussed 2 weeks later. So it gives that time for them to think about it. So we want to look at adding some additional wording to just outline that for residents. So I'll let you discuss.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions, Councillor Ward, let's start with you.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through the chair, I would question staff on how that logic applies here, in that with no long-term agenda, anything council is going to do is not known until Wednesday afternoon or evening. So why then would a notice of motion coming from an elected official require a lengthier time period for consideration, when it is no more of a surprise than everything else on the agenda. I think that's where the logic fails me. And that's where I said the linkage existed previously. If there was a long-term agenda that residents could go and view, they could see a window into what might be coming up. And therefore a notice of motion stemming from the council table would be something new to that, and it would give them time. But under the current structure, it's irrational to me. And the timelines do not make any sense right now to come up with a notice of motion. And then the next meeting, you read out that notice of motion, and then you wait 2 more weeks to actually hear that motion is wholly illogical to me. I mean, it defies, kind of the structure. There's nothing in the Local Government Act or anything that says that this is how it should be done. There's a precedent that's been established here that I've pushed back on for years that I think tied into that long-term agenda, which has been redundant for a long time. So I believe that every council member has the right and should be able to bring forward a motion within a reasonable time frame prior to the Wednesday agenda. And if there is some reason why it cannot fit on that agenda, again, we don't have any insight or view on that agenda, so we don't know if it's packed or empty. But if in fact there is an argument to be made why it can't be heard immediately on the next agenda, then let's have that discussion to say, hey, this agenda is packed, we have all of these things. And if need be, you can even have a council vote in that meeting whether or not to hear that motion, because you also run the risk of an undemocratic situation to say, this agenda is already full, sorry, we can't hear that until next agenda. I may believe that a couple items on that current agenda are less important. They're not as timely, they don't need to be heard. So therefore democracy is kind of suffering because there's something that could be viewed as more critical. So I think it should come to council in those cases to say, hey, this is the agenda as planned. We're going to release it on Wednesday. Councillor Day has prepared a motion to address X. Does council support replacing item X on the agenda with item Y? I mean, there should be no reason for any delay on a councillor motion coming forward in my mind. The current structure just doesn't work. So I think simply, changing the wording on this to have it considered at the next regular meeting of council doesn't quite do it for me. I think the option should be there to have it on the next meeting regardless, like right away. So anyway, I'll wait and see how everyone else is, but the current system doesn't work.
So Dave.
Thank you. Not a big fan of the notice of motions. They are really difficult. It's literally taken me longer than a month to get what's on the agenda later tonight on there. And that's frustrating. And along with that, there isn't really any good reason for having a notice of motion other than really getting the rest of your council on side, that you don't, surprise them with a motion that's kind of something they weren't expecting or didn't have time to think about in advance. But there's also a lot of control has been afforded to the mayor's chair. And this nothing to do with the current mayor. It was decided years ago when we first set up our committee selections. The choices that were made were the easiest way was to let the mayor appoint citizens to committees, etc. And it's really important to have citizens on those committees, but it also disadvantages elected members of council who have little to no input at those committees if they're not appointed to them. They get, just like the public, the same number of minutes to speak to the committee, the same sit back and watch what they do with it to occur afterwards. And when it comes to the table here, they had no input on how that motion was put forward, what was considered or wasn't considered. And they are again in a reactive position. So I don't think that notice of motion is particularly serving us well. it's good in that at least it forced us to write our motions down sometimes and help staff out. But I think that unless someone knows something else that they're doing for us, I don't feel that it's really helping our process a great deal.
Thanks very much, Councillor Day, for your thoughts. I'm just going to tell you, and I'm not going to say they're best practice, but the three boards that I sit on right now, they have notices of motion, and it's just before the adjournment. And any member at that meeting can do a notice of motion. They would say, okay, any notices of motion, they would come up and they'd be considered at the next meeting, just like that. It's done. And in most cases, that what the boards that I sit at, they actually have them already typed up and they're ready to go, and someone pops them up and they just read, this is the notice of motion, because we're not debating them. Remember that. I think it's so efficient because bang, you get to discuss it at the next one. And what happens in some cases, that notice of motion is actually canceled by the person making the notice of motion, because they'll do a little more research and go, oops, I don't want that there. So I would love to see that practice here, to tell you the truth. I think it is fair. It's certainly transparent, and I just like it. It's just a great way of doing business. And so, that's the way we do it at CRD, once on the board at Rural Roads. It's the way we did it. It was all done the same with Conservatory Music. And so, yeah, so it's a little bit different here, that's for sure. Yes, Councillor D.
Just a question for you. When you use those notices of motion, do you know what's coming on the next agenda? The people who are making these notices of motion?
No, not necessarily. No, actually, no.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And it's and then the other way you want, if it's an emergency situation, the way that you can do is you can do a notice of motion, and then you would actually, if it's urgent, some type of urgent thing, you can ask for same day consideration, and unanimously, if the council goes, yes, we all agree that isn't urgent, then we can discuss it. It becomes a new business item. So that's how they work it. And it works so efficient that way. So anyways, that's my suggestion in all this. Councillor Ward, please.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Mayor. I was interested in actually that piece around the long-term agenda. I noticed before that Mr. Johnson was looking to provide some feedback on that. I'd be curious about the staff view or CAO view on that particular item as it relates to this.
Yeah, one of the things we've started here, but we haven't got into the right rhythm of that yet, is the operational plan quarterly. Because that operational plan will show you when all of those items are supposed to be coming forward. That's linked back to the strategic plan. But currently with where we're at, we're not into that appropriate rhythm at this point. We do have an operational plan that we provided one update to you. What we are planning to do is in 27 have that coming to council regularly, so you can see when that quarterly update's coming, because it will show you when the transportation master plan was supposed to come forward. It will show you when amendments to DCCs were supposed to come forward, and it will actually show the month, but we're not there yet. And I think that this transparency piece that Councillor Ward has brought up with the near term and the longer term agenda might be appropriate until we get that rhythm into place, to make sure that the public is aware as things are coming forward. Because agenda planning is important, but also notices of motion from council, some of them are not much work and some of them are a lot of work. And how do you balance that with what's coming from the floor, what's into the operational plan, what comes off of the list in order to address that? But we don't have that rhythm in place right now. I don't have that with when that quarterly report is coming. That is a process improvement that we'll have for 27 that will be linked in that near and short-term agenda, will hopefully be in place with the operational plan. But this is really for council's feedback, right? This procedure bylaw is council's, and we want to make sure that we're reflecting what you would like and what ultimately the public would like to see with what we've got coming forward, and you can see with the work plan. And some municipalities I've worked with, notices of motions were quite lengthy. And what that council would do is they defer it to the operational plan, so they could look at that and ladder in with the work plan that we've already got, here's some other work that council would like to have done. What comes off that list in order to address that as an emergency issue? That's not to say that emergencies don't happen. They happen quite frequently where something needs to be addressed right away. So that's what I would suggest from what we'd be looking for in 27. But reflecting with where we're at today, council's feedback is important to make sure that you can do the business that you want to do.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Mayor, I still have the mic unless it's another discussion item. I was going to move a motion.
Okay. Oh, Councillor Day. Okay.
Okay,
Go ahead.
so Marcy, I'll talk slow here. And really what I'm doing with this motion is it's less about the specific wording than it is the direction to administration to concoct something here. I'm looking to, the wording would be establish a notice of motion period at the end of regular council meetings. So establish a notice of motion period at the end of regular council meetings for items to be heard at the next regular meeting. Incorporating an emergency motion option. So again, I'm just essentially restating what you said, Mr. Mayor, in terms of the approach. And then, and that there'd be a second section here. We reestablish a long-term agenda or commensurate approach. Or commensurate approach. It's COMMEN.
SURAT.
Nope, sorry, go back. I'll spell it for you. COMMEN. MMENSURATE. Yeah, commensurate approach to enhance transparency into forthcoming council business. And what exactly that looks like, again, that's the task for staff to bring it forward, but I think it touches on what you said, Mr. Mayor, and then also creates a window for members of the public to see, okay, what is coming up, and for council to see what is coming up. So while I would have the option to maybe bring forward a notice of motion at the end of a particular meeting, if I have some insight into what's coming, I may be savvy enough to recognize that staff capacity isn't there or it just isn't the right moment. So that's the thought there.
Okay, super. Thank you for the motivation. Councillor Day to the motion, please.
Okay, just waiting to see what the final change was. So instead of for items to be heard, it should be for motions to be heard. Apologies if I'm going beyond where I should be going. But I guess my comments on the motion are that it doesn't address the issue, which is that when I've sought to bring a motion forward, that has been difficult. And because of this notice of motion opportunity, it should not preclude making a motion from the floor at council on something that is on the agenda, right? So, for example, when we do our financial plan, we make motions from the floor on the fly by each council member. We're not precluded from doing that because we have the agenda. We put forward motions to deal with the items that are on the agenda. So the notice of motion is for something that isn't on the agenda. It's for something else. It's not for a regular item. So I think that's an important distinction, and I just want to make sure that we are all clear that where an item comes forward on the agenda, in order for a member of council to make a motion on the item, we don't require a notice of motion. They're only required where you want to bring something forward that has not yet been scheduled on an agenda.
Okay. Yeah, that's clear to me. I know exactly what you're saying. That's what I assumed we were talking about anyways.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Council Ward.
But in the interest of, I know it's getting granular, but per what Councillor Day has said, I wouldn't be opposed to adding another and that, or just essentially a note that says this does not preclude council members from making a motion in the course of a regular council meeting, something like that. The only reason I state that is in a world where, there's a new council here come October or 4 years beyond that or whatever it might be. Well, we have that understanding and it's, I think, understood. Be careful about the wording of anything that it's clearly defined. So I think just stating the obvious is in this case kind of an easy thing to do.
Yeah. No problem with that.
Because I get it. We get it, but hey, someone in November of 2026 might not.
Explain it.
I do nothing for granted.
Just made yourselves a better motion, that's all. Okay.
Just change your member from.
From making, yep. Says member from. Yeah. Perfect. Any other discussion on this? Seeing none, whoops, get that motion back on there. Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries unanimous. Thank you. Good work on that one, Council. Decision 7, please.
Thank you. The last one is on workshops. So the issue is we have this included in our procedure bylaw, but workshops are an informal session and they're not considered a meeting. So there's not really a requirement to have this in our meeting procedure bylaw. So we were looking to remove workshops from the procedure bylaw. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Day, and followed by Councillor Grove.
Thank you. So I will preface this by saying that the comments I'm making are not about this council or this administration. So I just don't want to offend anybody or cause concern. But I have seen workshops approach council meetings in their form and character in the past. And I think that it is important for that reason to protect democracy, because otherwise they could, in fact, be considered an undeclared in-camera meeting. So a workshop, I feel strongly, does need to be in the procedure bylaw, including some guidelines. No decision, no quorum, and no direction to include or exclude notes, tables, or input. And that, yes, we should inform the public of the place, time, and topic where a workshop is being held, so that it's just a layer of accountability to ensure that we don't accidentally, and it wasn't nefarious at the time that I recall it happening. It's simply a matter of when you're discussing something, it can very easily slide into the realm of trying to solve a problem. And if you're trying to solve a problem, the workshop is excellent for teasing out all the points to bring forward to a properly constituted meeting for a decision. And I just think it's really important to lay that out.
Thank you very much. Councillor Grove, good points.
Yeah, thank you. Is the public invited or welcome at workshops? Typically. Yeah, right. So the point well taken that the outline of the workshop, or if it's in a introductory fashion at the beginning, so everyone knows where that place is. If there's no minutes, if there's no quorum required, if there's no motions made, etc., of course, then I think the format needs to be defined, clearly defined somehow. But otherwise, I'm not sure that lives in this procedure bylaw or not. I don't really have an opinion there. But to clarify its position, because I know we had a workshop in the first year of the term where we came away from it, and I heard reference to that a couple of months later. I'm sorry, I don't have a better, clearer example of it. It may have even been a traffic, may have been something to do with the public works building, but there was reference at council table as if things said were somehow carried more weight than I thought should have, which have been a result of what I think you're referencing, Councillor Day, where the weight of something starts to take on a meaning beyond the intention of the workshop itself. So I'm not sure what that all means and how we deal with that. But so whether it's in the kind of procedure bylaw or not, I'm not sure. I have just sort of reiterating a bit of what you're saying, I think. So.
Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, this is precisely the reason that committee of the whole meetings happen, so that you can have an informal discussion. It's the rules of order are different, but it's public, right? The public has an opportunity to attend, be heard. A workshop could be posted internally and just council's aware, the public aren't there with it. That committee of the whole is the intention to have those workshops in that format so that the public can see that, rather than having a standalone workshop evening, right? Because you'll have a quorum of council potentially at a workshop, and that constitutes an open meeting. So therefore those public notes, minutes, the public can go and see what's been said, so that that business is being in that regular forum. So that's why we brought forward this recommendation about workshops, because it is, and it could be interpreted in a very loose way, and this is helpful for the new council to understand that component. So that's why we brought that forward for council's consideration and adjudication.
Yeah, I guess just my opinion on this is, well, workshops are informal. That they, well, they're not formal at all. The meetings are not. You know, the only problem with removing any reference to them, I think, is taking an element of transparency out. Exactly what you just said, Councillor Day. So that's why I think it should be mentioned, but you know, that it is, you know, it's not a formal meeting. You know, it is educational. I think that's what most of our workshops are. We all get educated, and you know, we certainly don't push any agenda items at those things. But I don't want to lose the transparency of that. You know, to say that, hey, we do have these things. You know, and sometimes we actually sometimes invite committee members to the workshops, right? So yeah. Okay, go to Councillor Day.
So I have a motion, and my motion is that workshops be included in the procedure bylaw, including the guidelines, no decision, no quorum, no direction to include or exclude notes, tables, or input, and yes to posting the place, time, and topic. And if public, that the general topic be posted.
Just a clarification, no quorum. What do you mean by that statement?
That there isn't a need for a quorum, and no quorum has to be met, so that there is no possibility of making a motion at a workshop.
See what you mean. You had me scared. Oh, sorry. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not opposed to this in principle. I take a different view, though. I believe that we should just eliminate it entirely. When you look at the community charter, it's pretty specific that as a general rule, meetings should be open to the public. That's the guiding principle of the community charter, and that And the only exceptions that they reference are the reasons you would go into camera. You know, and there's some new information around you know, dealing with indigenous entities and things like that. But they're very specific reasons, you know, involving litigation and employees and matters like that. So anything outside of that that would constitute something to be held in a workshop could, in theory, just be held in a committee of the whole meeting. I use this very, you know, topic we're on right now as an example. We were asked to provide feedback through email, right, to this procedure bylaw. I sent in some thoughts of mine. I know other councillors did, and included in the package this evening is a condensed version of that information, but it's not transparent. It doesn't have my name attached to my comments. It doesn't have Councillor Day's attached to hers or Councillor Jordison's attached to hers. If I'm a member of public, one of the gentlemen out there, and I'm reading the agenda package, I wouldn't know which councillor thought it was a good idea to change the notice of motion. It's not handled properly. That feedback should have been solicited in a public forum. We should have had a committee of the whole meeting to say, we want to explore revisions to the council procedure bylaw. We're looking to get feedback from council. We could provide that in an open forum. I mean, every meeting that is a workshop could be conceivably open to the public. So I'm going to vote against this, but not Councillor Day because I disagree with you at all. I like what you've said, but I would prefer to strike workshops entirely from it because I don't think they exist. I think there's in-camera meetings and then there's meetings for the public. 100% transparency or not under the community charter. Anything else becomes a gray area. And I understand what you're saying here, but how do you enforce the fact that a workshop didn't lean people towards a particular decision, right? How do you know, there's no direction, but who defines that? Who's going to be held accountable for that? Who is managing that? I've been a part of a number of workshops, and while a decision wasn't made, you go away from it with information. And I'll use one last example. I know I'm being a bit wordy, but I go back to the very beginning when we were shown traffic modeling. And we were shown live models of what traffic modeling would look like 40 years from now. And I've referenced that time and again, and I'm going to use the term pissed off because the narrative shifted after that meeting. It was done behind closed doors. The public weren't able to see it. And then I was told I didn't see what I saw. When I started referencing specific traffic models and proposals for our streets and what made sense, it was based off that information, but that information was never public. So there was no accountability. And then I got told that, no, you didn't really see it that way. We went and did it again. And this is what happened. The public piece suited a narrative that already existed around VMP versus Machosen and so on. And what I had seen was hidden in the guise of a workshop. So even though no decisions were made, right, and no direction was given, there was no, you know, quorum was not part of the discussion. Critical information was made available to this council and then buried. So that's why I oppose this, because that has stuck with me for 3.5 years and I'm not letting it go, obviously.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks very much. They're great comments, Council Ward, on that one. And I must admit truly that I was concerned about the direction of that workshop. That was pretty edgy. It really was. But things like, you know, all the training that you got in, you know, in the first 6 months, they're workshops. They're real workshops. I don't think, you know, I want to do committee of the whole, learning out how to be a municipal, you know, councillor or mayor. You know, we went through a lot of those. There's true workshops. Okay, absolutely educational. That's how come I think there has to be reference to it so that we don't lose sight of that. But I do agree with you. And your comments are valid. Councillor Day, please.
Sorry to be speaking at length, but I do believe that there is specific reference to workshops for strategic planning, for new council orientations, and it is not during this council. It is many councils ago when a member of council who had more experience than myself spoke up when a new mayor overstepped his bounds and went into something that would be covered under in-camera legislation in a workshop. And it took a lot to turn that train around and remember that we were in a workshop And that if we were going to talk about in-camera stuff, we needed to go to an in-camera meeting to talk about in-camera stuff. So I think it's really important. I don't disagree with that perhaps this is only a beginning of the guide rails that need to be in place to ensure that workshops remain transparent. And there are times when a council needs to kind of stick their heads together and work their stuff out before going to the public, and that's perfectly okay. It's just not okay if decisions get made, which is why it needs to be in the procedure bylaw so that it's really clear.
Thank you very much. Council Grove, I'm gonna call the question after this. I gotta wrap her up here, folks.
Yeah. 10 seconds.
You got her.
9, 8. I understand that meeting, a workshop may be closed if it's like an orientation session. It can be closed because it's orientation study. And that's what we're talking about, the learning stuff, right? So that option remains, and yet I support the motion for all the reasons stated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, at this point in time, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please. Okay, and those opposed? Council Ward, Council Jordison, motion carries. Okay, we're gonna go in camera now, so I'm gonna adjourn this regular committee of the whole right now, as there's no further business, and we will go into in camera 2 minutes. 2 minutes, thank you. Go back.
Need me to go with you? All right.